Hey, so today I want to talk about the Kinderhook Plates. Have you heard of them? I have a lot of detail and a lot I want to share about these little plates and the significance of these plates. So if you look up the Kinderhook Plates on LDS.org, for example, the church's website, you will find that they kind of brush off any hint of Joseph having much interest in them or of him even translating them at all. They basically say it was a 19th century hoax. They appear to be a 19th century hoax, which, yes, they were a 19th century hoax. But what's interesting is that Joseph had plenty to say about these little plates, and he did begin the translation process of them. This has been a big issue because the Kinderhook Plates, along with the Book of Abraham, present a really big problem when it comes to Joseph Smith and his ability to translate not only those, but this book. If he did not translate the Kinderhook Plates or the Book of Abraham from the papyri in the case of the Book of Abraham, or the etchings found on these Kinderhook Plates, if it's not accurate and it's nothing more than a hoax or a false translation in the case of the Book of Abraham, then how did he translate the Book of Mormon? So this is a really important video, and I hope that you will pay attention and listen to all the facts surrounding these 6 little brass plates. I want to play a video. It's only 4 minutes long, and I'm going to include it right now in this part of my video so that you can just see the history in the background and all the details and pictures surrounding these plates. So give it a watch.
On April 16, 1843, a man by the name of Robert Wiley began an excavation of an Indian burial mound near Kinderhook, Illinois. He had had the same dream 3 nights in a row that had told him he should dig there. The work was very labor-intensive, so he hired several men to assist him in the dig. They dug a shaft about 10 feet into the ground before discovering a skeleton and other artifacts underneath a limestone cover. Among the artifacts were a set of 6 bell-shaped brass plates covered in unknown symbols. One of the men present was a member of the church and expressed great excitement when the plates were pulled from the earth. Word spread quickly to the prophet Joseph Smith, and the plates were sent for so he could examine them. When Joseph saw the plates, he had them sent to the antiquarian societies at Philadelphia, France, and England. They informed him that if the language was genuine, it was a dead one, and it was unknown to them. Satisfied, Joseph began to translate the plates. Through various publications, he reported, "I have translated a portion of the plates and find they contain the history of the person with whom they were found. He was a descendant of Ham through the loins of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and he received his kingdom from the ruler of heaven and earth." As with other quotes taken from the prophet, this quote was taken down by Joseph's closest friend and scribe, William Clayton, who had spent the entire day in the prophet's home, sealing him to one of his plural wives and speaking with him about the plates, which were on display in his home. This statement, along with other statements about the plates, was published in the form of a broadside in the Times and Seasons, along with a promise to publish the translation once it had been completed. It was speculated that this translation would form the next Book of Mormon scripture, a book comparable to the Book of Mormon in importance. Unfortunately, Joseph was murdered before a full translation could be completed, and any translation manuscript which he may have produced has been lost. In 1879, a man named Wilbur Fugit claimed in a letter to a Mr. Cobb that he had forged the plates in order to hoax the church. "I received your letter in regard to those plates, and will say in answer that they are a humbug, gotten up by Robert Wiley, Bridge Whitton, and myself. We read in Pratt's prophecy that truth is yet to spring out of the earth. We concluded to prove the prophecy by way of a joke. We soon made our plans and executed them. Our plans worked admirably." Members of the church dismissed Mr. Fugit's claim, believing the claim itself to be a hoax. For the next 100 years, the plates remained a source of faith for the church, lending credence to the Book of Mormon and Joseph's gift of translation, and continued to be used in church publications for these reasons. In 1920, a surviving plate was found by the Chicago Historical Society. The September 1962 edition of the Improvement Era published photos of the plate, along with an article stating that the plate was genuine and proved Joseph was a prophet and seer. In 1966, this remaining plate was tested at Brigham Young University, but the tests were inconclusive. In 1980, Professor D. Lynn Johnson of the Department of Materials Science and Engineering at Northwestern University examined their surviving plate. He used microscopy and various scanning devices and determined that the tolerances and composition of its metal proved that it was forged in a 19th century blacksmith shop. He also found traces of nitrogen in the hieroglyphs, evidence of nitric acid etching, which would not have been used anciently. This corroborated the letter written by Mr. Fugit in 1879, which described nitric acid etching as the method for inscribing the plates. In 1981, the church was forced to admit that the plates were a hoax. They now deny that Joseph had been fooled into making a false translation, and insist that he had no interest in the plates, claims which are unsupported and in fact refuted by the historical record.
Okay, so that was very informative, and I hope that that was easy to understand. I'm sure it was. I think that's a great, very well done video. I will source the link to it below, the original creators of that video. And now I want to include more details on these plates. In 1843, 6 brass plates were discovered in a mound near Kinderhook, Illinois. Mormons who saw the plates were impressed by their ancient appearance and believed these plates might substantiate Joseph Smith's claims that an ancient document could be written on plates and buried in the American continent. On May 1st, 1843, the Times and Seasons reprinted the following from the Quincy Whig. And I quote, "A Mr. J. Roberts from Pike County called upon us last Monday with a written description of a discovery which was recently made near Kinderhook in that county. It appeared that a young man by the name of Wiley, a resident in Kinderhook, dreamed 3 nights in succession that in a certain mound in the vicinity there were treasures concealed. Impressed with this strange occurrence of dreaming the same dream 3 nights in succession, he came to the conclusion to satisfy his mind by digging into the mound. Finding it quite laborious, he invited others to assist him. Finally, a company of 10 or 12 repaired to the mound and assisted in digging out the shaft commenced by Wiley. After penetrating the mound about 11 feet, they came to a bed of limestone that had apparently been subjected to the action of fire. They removed the stone, which were small and easy to handle, to the depth of 2 feet more when they found 6 brass plates secured and fastened together by 2 iron wires, by which were so decayed that they readily crumbled to dust upon being handled. The plates were so completely covered with rust as almost to obliterate the characters inscribed upon them, but after undergoing a chemical process, the inscriptions were brought out plain and distinct. By whom these plates were deposited, there must ever remain a secret, unless someone skilled in deciphering hieroglyphics may be found to unravel the mystery. Some pretend to say that Smith, the Mormon leader, has the ability to read them. If he has, he will confer a great favor to the public by removing the mystery which hangs over them. We learn that there was a Mormon present when the plates were found, who, it is said, leaped for joy at the discovery and remarked that it would go to prove the authenticity of the Book of Mormon, which it undoubtedly will. The plates above alluded to were exhibited in this city last week and are now, we understand, in Nauvoo, subject to the inspection of the Mormon prophet. The public curiosity is greatly excited. And if Smith can decipher the hieroglyphics on the plates, he will do more towards throwing light on the early history of this continent than any man now living. Times and Seasons, Volume 4, pages 186 through 187, 1843. I'm going to continue. The plates were believed to be authentic, and they excited great public interest in the area. Within a week of their alleged discovery, they were brought to Nauvoo for a short stay. An editorial comment in the same Times and Seasons article indicates how important the eager writer felt these brass plates might be. And I quote, "Circumstances are daily transpiring which give additional testimony to the authenticity of the Book of Mormon. The following will perhaps have a tendency to convince the skeptical that such thing, metal plates, have been used and that even the obnoxious Book of Mormon may be true. Mr. Smith has had those plates. What his opinion concerning them is, we have not yet ascertained. The gentleman that owns them has taken them away, or we should have given a facsimile of the plates and characters in this number. We are informed, however, that the purpose is returning with them for translation. If so, we may be able yet to furnish our readers with it." Mormons did eventually bring them to Joseph to have them translated. In a letter written from Nauvoo dated May 2nd, 1843, Charlotte Haven stated, "We hear frequently from our Quincy friends through Mr. Joshua Moore. His last call on us was last Saturday, and he brought with him half a dozen thin pieces of brass, apparently very old, in the form of a bell about 5 or 6 inches long. They had on them scratches that looked like symbolic characters. They were recently found, he said, in a mound a few miles below Quincy. When he showed them to Joseph, the latter said that the figures on writing on them was similar to that in which the Book of Mormon was written. And if Mr. Moore would leave them, he thought that by the help of the revelation, he would be able to translate them. So a sequel to that holy book may soon be expected." A Girl's Letters from Nauvoo, Overland Monthly, December 1890, page 630. And there is a copy of this exact paper from the Overland Monthly, this issue, on Utah Lighthouse Ministries page. And I will link that below so you can see it. This isn't just some obscure random thing. Like, there's proof of that document. So, the con was on. Joseph received the plates and treated them as authentic artifacts. In fact, he later claimed he had translated a portion of them. The evidence of this claim comes from the diary of William Clayton, Joseph Smith's private secretary. Clayton is an important character in the history of Mormonism, and his journal was considered so reliable its text was always rewritten in first person, as though Joseph himself was speaking. When the church used it as a basis for the story of the Kinderhook Plates in the official church history, the following was attributed to Joseph Smith by the Mormon Church. Monday, May 1st, I insert facsimiles of the 6 brass plates found near Kinderhook in Pike County, Illinois on April 23rd by Mr. Robert Wiley and others while excavating a large mound. They found a skeleton about 6 feet from the surface of the earth, which must have stood 9 feet high. The plates were found on the breast of the skeleton and were covered on both sides with ancient characters. I have translated a portion of them and find they contain the history of the person with whom they were found. He was a descendant of Ham through the loins of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and that he received his kingdom from the ruler of heaven and earth. History of the Church, Volume 5, page 372. In addition to this, on May 7th, 1843, Parley P. Pratt wrote a letter containing the following statement. 6 plates having the appearance of brass have lately been dug out of a mound by a gentleman in Pike County, Illinois. They are small and filled with engravings in Egyptian language and contain the genealogy of one of the ancient Jaredites back to Ham, the son of Noah. His bones were found in the same vase made of cement. Part of the bones were 15 feet underground. A large number of citizens have seen them, the Kinderhook plates, and compared the characters with those on the Egyptian papyrus, which is now in this city. The Ensign, August 1981, page 73. Clearly, Pratt was not speaking from his own expertise here. Only Joseph Smith claimed to have the ability to translate ancient languages. This close associate of Joseph was quoting Smith himself in this statement. But the truth was eventually revealed. Unfortunately for the line of Mormon evidences, it was later revealed the plates were forgeries. On April 25th, 1856, W.P. Harris, who was one of the 9 witnesses to the discovery of the plates, wrote a letter in which he stated the plates were not genuine, and I quote, "I was present with a number at or near Kinderhook and helped to dig at the time the plates were found. I made an honest affidavit to the same. Since that time, Bridge Whitton said to me that he cut and prepared the plates, and he and R. Wiley engraved them themselves. Wilburn Fugit appeared to be the chief, with R. Wiley and B. Whitton." The Book of Mormon by James D. Bales, page 95 through 96. To make matters worse, on June 30th, 1879, the aforementioned Wilburn Fugate was also one of the 9 people who signed the certificate, wrote a letter in which he admitted his part in the hoax. "I received your letter in regard to those plates, and will say in answer that they are a humbug, gotten up by Robert Wiley, Bridge Whitton, and myself. We read in Pratt's prophecy that the truth is yet to spring out of the earth. We concluded to prove the prophecy by way of a joke." Letter of W. Fugate, as cited in the Kinderhook Plates by Welby W. Ricks, reprinted in the Improvement Era, September 1962. Mormons began to realize that the discovery of these plates was a planned con game all along. Some chose to hold on to the possibility the plates were real. Others slowly began to accept the truth. But for a time, there was no other forensic way to determine if the statements of Fugate and Harris were true. As the years passed, Mormonism seems to have been undecided on the issue, but all that was about to change. So, then the plates rediscovered. The Kinderhook plates were lost around the time of the American Civil War, but nearly 100 years later, one of them was rediscovered in the Chicago Historical Society Museum by Professor M. Wilford Polson of Brigham Young University. Welby W. Ricks, who was president of the BYU Archaeological Society, hailed the discovery as a vindication of Joseph Smith's work. And I quote, "A recent rediscovery of one of the Kinderhook plates, which was examined by Joseph Smith Jr., reaffirms his prophetic calling and reveals the false statements made by one of the finders. The plates are now back in their original category of genuine. Joseph Smith Jr. stands as a true prophet and translator of ancient records by divine means, and all the world is invited to investigate the truth which has sprung out of the earth, not only of the Kinderhook plates, but of the Book of Mormon as well." End of quote. In 1965, 3 years after Mr. Ricks made this incredible declaration, George M. Lawrence, a Mormon physicist, was given permission to examine and make some non-destructive physical studies of the surviving plate. This test would hopefully date the plates and end the controversy about their authenticity. In his report of a physical study of the Kinderhook plate number 5, George Lawrence wrote, "The dimensions, tolerances, composition, and workmanship are consistent with the facilities of an 1843 blacksmith shop and with the fraud stories of the original participants." During the Civil War, the Kinderhook plates were apparently lost. In the early 1960s, M. Wilford Polson, a faculty member of Brigham Young University, discovered one of the original plates at the Chicago Historical Museum. However, it was mislabeled as an original gold plate of the Book of Mormon. Eventually, using the Kinderhook plates facsimiles found in the History of the Church, the plate was confirmed to be plate number 5. Professor Polson's investigations led him to claim that the plate found in Chicago was a forgery and not an original Kinderhook plate. Tests on the plate were performed in 1960, 1966, and 1969. The results were inconclusive. The plates could have been made in the 1800s, as claimed by the hoaxers, or they could have been much more ancient, as the church had always claimed. In 1962, Welby W. Ricks, president of the BYU Archaeological Society, said that the tests proving plate 5 was a forgery put Joseph Smith's work back to the category as genuine. Ricks also said that Joseph Smith did translate some of the Kinderhook plates as the church historically taught. There is an article on the Improvement Era, September 1962, that discusses this, along with a picture of plate number 5. In 1980, permission was obtained to use the destructive methods necessary to accurately determine the plate's age. The resulting electronic and chemical analysis resolved that the plate was not of ancient origin. Instead, it was produced in the 1800s in a manner exactly as the hoaxer had claimed. Also, further analysis verified that this could not have been a forgery of the Kinderhook plates, but was in fact one of the actual plates discovered in Kinderhook in 1843. So to recap that, the plates have been verified to have been manufactured in the 1800s. They are not ancient. Their inscriptions are meaningless symbols conceived and invented by hoaxers. They are not letters, words, or linguistic signifiers of any kind. In 1980, however, the Mormon scholar Stanley P. Kimball was able to secure permission from the Historical Society, the Chicago Historical Society, for the recommended destructive tests. Professor Kimball described the results of the test in the official Mormon Church publication, The Ensign, in August 1981, pages 66 through 70. A recent electronic and chemical analysis of a metal plate brought in 1843 to the prophet Joseph Smith appears to solve a previously unanswered question in church history, helping to further evidence that the plate is what its producers later said it was, a 19th century attempt to lure Joseph Smith into making a translation of ancient-looking characters that had been etched into the plates. As a result of these tests, we concluded that the plate is not of ancient origin. We concluded that the plate was made from a true brass alloy, copper and zinc, typical of the mid-19th century, whereas the brass of ancient times was actually bronze, an alloy of copper and tin. There was no doubt that the plates were not authentic, but were instead the product of human imagination and trickery. This discovery had wide-ranging consequences for the Mormon Church. So, lots of people believe that Joseph would have exposed himself eventually had he had opportunity to finish the translation that he started. If Joseph Smith had not been murdered in June of 1844, it is very possible, even probable, that he would have published a complete translation of these fraudulent plates. He had already done this with the Book of Abraham Papyri. Just a month before his death, it was reported he was busy in translating them. The new work will be nothing more or less than a sequel to the Book of Mormon. Warsaw Signal, May 22, 1844 is where you'll find that quote. The fact Joseph Smith was actually preparing to print a translation of the plates is verified by a broadside poster published by the Mormon newspaper, the Nauvoo Neighbor, in June 1843. On this poster, containing facsimiles of the plates, we find the following. And I quote, "The contents of the plates, together with a facsimile of the same, will be published in the Times and Seasons as soon as the translation is completed." Here's that picture so you can see it. Oh, the story has been changed on all of this. Today, the Mormon Church denies the fact that Joseph ever considered these Kinderhook plates to be real. The church now claims William Clayton was not actually speaking for Joseph, but this contradicts the earlier position the church took for nearly 140 years. Before the rediscovery of the plate, the Mormon Church claimed William Clayton's words were in fact a precise enunciation of the words of Joseph, and they published them as Joseph's words in the history of the church. The Mormon Church actually defended Joseph Smith's partial translation of the plates. In fact, there are several pages dedicated to the story of the Kinderhook plates in the 7-volume History of the Church. But as soon as the church discovered with certainty the Kinderhook plates were completely fraudulent, it tried to distance itself from the whole situation by simply claiming, and I quote, "There is no evidence that Joseph Smith ever concluded the plates were genuine." The Ensign, August 1981, pages 66 through 70. For 140 years, a partial translation of the plates, as recorded by Joseph's personal secretary and witnessed by several Mormon elders, was more than enough evidence for the Mormon Church. But this is no longer the case. Why? The Mormon Church seems to recognize the Kinderhook plates are yet another piece of historical and archaeological evidence pointing not to the authenticity of Mormonism, but to the fraudulent nature of their prophet, Joseph Smith. In order for Joseph to claim the plates contain the history of the person with whom they were found, he was a descendant of Ham through the loins of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and that he received his kingdom from the ruler of heaven and earth, Joseph would have to have been able to read quite a bit. To know this much about the contents of the plates, Joseph would have to scan all of them and read enough to get the general idea of what they said. He would have to read a large portion of what we know now to be a completely fraudulent hoax. It simply isn't possible to read this much of something that doesn't exist in the first place. How are we to account for this statement by Joseph? Either we have to deny Joseph made this statement, but 140 years of Mormon teaching and the related statements of other believers simply will not allow us to do this. Or we must conclude Joseph was simply lying. With the Book of Mormon, Joseph claimed to have 11 witnesses who saw the gold plates, but Joseph was careful not to show the plates to the public. He did not allow anyone who was trained to detect forgery or who had studied ancient languages to examine the original plates. But this was not the case with the Kinderhook plates. These plates were publicly exhibited, and many people had a chance to examine them. Both William Clayton and Brigham Young had the honor of tracing or making an outline of one of the pages in their journals. The first three presidents of the Mormon Church, Joseph Smith, Brigham Young, and John Taylor, all believed the Kinderhook plates were real. B.H. Roberts wrote, John Taylor, the close personal friend of the prophet, took the find seriously and expressed implicit confidence in his editorial that the prophet could give a translation of the plates. And this attitude the church continued to maintain. History of the Church, Volume 5, page 379. Footnote. Not one of the first three prophets of the church could tell these plates were forgeries. None could tell that the widely accepted statement made by Joseph was false. Would they have recognized the original plates of the Book of Mormon to be forgeries? Did they accept the teaching of Joseph related to the Book of Mormon with the same blind acceptance they demonstrated with the Kinderhook plates? They were obviously capable of being deceived, and Joseph clearly revealed himself to be incapable of translating with the divine power of God. The Kinderhook plates reveal the false nature of Mormonism and the deceptive efforts of Joseph Smith. So in conclusion to all of this, the outcome raises several troubling concerns. How could the prophet Joseph Smith claim to have translated these invented symbols? Moreover, how can it be true that the made-up symbols themselves provide an account of a descendant of Ham through the loins of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, as Joseph decreed? Critics cite this as validation that Joseph could not be a real seer as he claimed. For if he were a real prophet, he would not have attempted to provide a translation for fake plates. We can place these troubling concerns into perspective by considering another aspect of the Kinderhook plate saga, the origin of the story. The account of the Kinderhook plates does not come from an anti-Mormon book. Rather, Joseph Smith relates a first-person account featured in the story in the church's official book, History of the Church. The book lists Joseph Smith as its author. Would the true church print a false record of the event in its own history book? I'm going to post great sources below in the description. I'll have multiple links for you to check out. But this video was very important. This is an important subject. You need to know about it. If you are Mormon and you are searching, I just hope that you will look into all of these issues. Type in Kinderhook plates on lds.org and you can read most of what I just read. Obviously, it's not all there, but it says they're a 19th century hoax. They know that for sure. They just will not tell you about the part that the history of the church contains his partial translation. So I want to thank you all for watching. My channel is packed full of Latter-day Saint info and news and sources and topics and so many different things. So I hope that you'll check out the rest of my channel. I have many videos already here on YouTube, and I have more to come in the future. So if you want to hit that button below, the red subscribe button, I'd love for you to subscribe to my channel. I'd love to see you back, and I would love for you to join me in this quest for truth. I want to speak truth, whether it's about Latter-day Saint topics or about Christianity. I am a born-again Christian. I have faith and hope and joy in Jesus Christ as my personal Savior, the real and true Jesus Christ of the Bible. I would love to talk to you more about biblical Christianity. Just because Mormonism is not true and it has so many problems does not mean that there's no hope and that there's no God. The Bible was here thousands of years before Joseph Smith or the Book of Mormon, another testament of Jesus Christ. Well, there is not another testament of Jesus Christ. The Bible is complete, it is full, it was finished, and everything that we need to know about God and Christianity is contained in that amazing book. So I hope that you'll reach out to me. I hope that you will seek out the true God and biblical Christianity. I would love to talk to you. My email is in the description below. A link to my Facebook page that I connect with this YouTube account is also in the link below. So I hope you'll find me on there. And if you want to talk further, shoot me an email or feel free to leave a comment below. Just an FYI, the comments, I get so many throughout all of my videos that I may miss it. So if you really want to get a hold of me, I encourage you to either reach out on Facebook or to email me personally. I'd love to talk to you. Thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you in future videos.